Huh? Chandra asked me to give the theme tonight. And no theme. And so I was, yesterday we were talking about the Brihad Bhagavatamrita. And so we talked about Sanatana Goswami, who actually revealed that story which Parikshit Maharaj told his mother. And some Kamaniya doesn't know really the story, so if you maybe just briefly could mention the story. And then, but my question is, why does Krishna reveal this story through Sanatana Goswami? Like everything else, we have a little bit like there's King Parikshit who tells the story to his mother. So why is it revealed through Sanatana Goswami?
Mm-hmm. Well, first of all, Brihad Bhagavatamrita is the really kind of the original book for Gaudiya Vaishnavism. As you know, Sanatana Goswami is like the architect of the Sampradaya. And Brihad Bhagavatamrita, the Srimad Bhagavatam is the centerpiece of revelation for the Gaudiya Vaishnavas. Amongst all the bodies or branches, let's say, of revelation, Hindu sacred texts, the Gaudiyas give a central position to Srimad Bhagavatam and feel that, and argue well, that all the sacred texts will be understood in context with the Srimad Bhagavatam as the center to the hub around which they're moving. So it's a peculiar, in one sense, position that the Goswamis have taken, in that it's one that wasn't taken before them, but very good. Jiva Goswami has given very good logic and reasoning as to why in his Tattva Sandarbha, the Srimad Bhagavatam takes such a central position. So, and as we see, of course, it is a book about the core and central ideology of Gaudiya Vaishnavism. It's a book in which Krishna is spoken about, revealed from ultimately from the perspective of Radha, which is what Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is about. So, Srimad Bhagavatam, then all of the Gaudiya granthas or texts are more or less speaking about the Bhagavatam in one sense or another, extending the themes, extending the leelas, plumbing the depths of the philosophy and theology there. And amongst all of those Gaudiya books, it said Nana Shastri Charana Nipanosa Dharma Samstapako Lokanam Hitakaranam. Out of Hitakaranam means compassion, out of compassion for the local, for the people of the world. They mined, so to speak, the gems of the sacred texts and wrote what we sometimes refer to as the Bhakti Shastras. They're the Shastras for us, written by them. They're the founding acharyas of the Sampradaya, the Goswamis. And so, amongst, anyway, their various books, Srimad Bhagavatam, or Brihad Bhagavatam, reaches the first, and Sanatana Goswami was the par excellence student of Srimad Bhagavatam. He's described in Chaitanya Charitamrita as having collected a group of pundits whom he would hang with, so to speak, and just to discuss the implications of Srimad Bhagavatam over and over again. And so from him, we have a book that is more often than not, without thinking about it, in Gaudiya Sampradaya and elsewhere outside of the Sampradaya, attributed to Sanatana himself. Whereas he explains the book to be something that precedes him and that he is commenting on. For the most part, it's thought he's commenting on his own book rather than commenting on a book that precedes him. So your question has something to do with that, I guess, the origins of the book. Sanatana makes the case, I would say he makes the case, he simply states. He doesn't really give any proofs or evidence to support his position, but he states that there are different versions of the Mahabharata. Just like he doesn't give this example, but I'll give you an example. There could be said to be different versions of the Bhagavad Gita. For example, it's sometimes thought that Krishna spoke the Bhagavad Gita to Arjuna, the Kshatriya, and he spoke the same wisdom to Uddhava, the Brahmana, which is referred to as the Uddhava Gita section, a large section, 11th canto of the Bhagavatam. And if you look at the two texts, of course, they're very similar. Very, very similar in the questions and answers and so on and so forth. But speaking to the Brahman, Uddhava, it came out a little different. Speaking to the Kshatriya, Arjuna, a little different. Of course, they're both Vaishnavas and so forth. But Sanatana Goswami states that there were different versions of the Mahabharata, and this is a particular version. I forget exactly the details that he gives, but he gives no support for his position. And the history to the text, Brihad Bhagavatamrita, in the form of Parikshit Maharaj speaking to Uttara, his mother, the story is that, according to Sanatana, that, of course, Parikshit Maharaj was cursed to die in 7 days. Another example comes to mind, of course, here, and I mentioned that. That's the central theme of Srimad Bhagavatam, right? Parikshit Maharaj is dying, And so he goes to the bank of the Ganges, he hears from Sukadev. The story, at the same time, of Parikshit Maharaj's involvement with Sukadev and the curse from the Brahmin boy, and so this also related in the Mahabharata. But the story is different there. It's the same story, but you can tell the same story to different audiences and emphasize different points. And that's what you find in so many of the sacred texts of the Hindus, stories. Even some stories have their, or the Puranas have their origins in the Upanishads. They're told again and they're told again and they're told again. They're told in different Puranas and different itihasas and so forth, texts, and with different nuanced emphases when the story is told relative to the audience for whom they're written. Srimad Bhagavatam, some of the stories in Srimad Bhagavatam are told in other Puranas, but all the stories there in Bhagavatam are told in a certain way. And the emphasis in Srimad Bhagavatam is to showcase the possibility of attaining and the excellence of the Braj Bhavas, the Bhavas of Braj Mangal. Therefore, there are three basic centers to the Bhagavatam that all appear in the 10th canto. You have the Vatsalya Rasa center, covering the Damodar Leela, several chapters. You have Sakya Rasa center, Brahma Vimohan Leela, and the killing of Dhenukasura, 12 chapters, 12, 13, 14, and 15. It's all centered on Sakya Rasa. Then you have the 5 chapters centered on the Rasa Leela. These are the three main sentiments of Braj. You see how much attention has been given to them in the 10th canto. Each of those sections cover several chapters. And so this is what Bhagavatam is about. It tells some of the same stories, even from Krishna, that you'll find in the Padma Purana or the Vishnu Purana, but you can't get from the same stories as they're told in the Padma Purana what you can get from the way the stories are told in Srimad Bhagavatam. They're not invested with the same power. They're not told with this from the same perspective, and so forth. So this is what you find in Hindu texts as far as the various narratives. They're told, they're retold in different books at different times, to different audiences, and so forth. So each one has a particular purpose in mind. If I said to tell a story, then I may tell it slightly different to children than to adults, and so on and so forth. So as the story of Maharaj Parikshit is told in Bhagavatam and in Mahabharata, Mahabharata will take you nowhere transcendentally if you take out the Bhagavad Gita from Mahabharata. So it tells the story of Parikshit in a different way. At any rate, what Sanatana Goswami says in Brihad Bhagavatamrita is that this Parikshit Maharaj heard from Sukadev, having been cursed to die, he went to the bank of the Ganges. Stories he didn't eat or sleep, which is to indicate how attentively we should hear Srimad Bhagavatam to get the desired result with some sense of urgency, so with the cause and the purpose, the circumstances create some sense of urgency. Death, it's said that it was spoken in 7 days, and that we all have 7 days to live only. Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday. One of them we're going to die on. So with this in mind, we should hear Srimad Bhagavatam like Parikshit Maharaj. Parikshit Maharaj was subject to the curse of the Brahmin boy, although his father thought that it was improper. But what gave rise to that was, from one perspective, Parikshit Maharaj's impatience. He came to the hermitage of Samika, and he was in a trance, and Parikshit Maharaj was thirsty. And he was not even offered any water. He thought, what is this? The king has come, he's not even offered any water. So he took snake and garlanded the sage, and the sage's son took offense and cursed him and so forth. Well, Parikshit Maharaj in Bhagavatam, of course, makes the case that eating and drinking is the cause of my death. I shall stop eating and drinking. That may be the cause of my immortality. You understand?
That's in the Mahabharata?
Bhagavatam. In Bhagavatam. What he in the first canto, as the story is being introduced, Sukadeva appears at the beginning of the second canto. A good part of the first canto is glorification of Parikshit Maharaj, and the beginning of the story of the cursing of Kali, and so on and so forth, and ultimately cursing of Parikshit Maharaj, who fasted from food and drink, thinking that the need to eat, we think that if we eat, we will live. Parikshit Maharaj concluded, eating is the cause of one's death. Because it's a taking. You understand? In order to, Jivo Jivasya Jivam, the Bhagavatam makes a very Darwinian statement. One living being is food for another. So we think we should feed people, and that will help to stop death. But the Bhagavatam's perspective is eating is killing you. Because as long as you continue to eat, you have to continue to die. Because eating involves taking. And taking has repercussions. When you take, you owe, as they say. So off to work you go. Because you've taken, now you owe, now you have to work. So this is the realm of karma. So he ate, so he's getting a little philosophical here. Obviously, Raj, by eating, actually, the urge to eat and drink perpetuates death, birth and death, the cycle of birth and death. So I will cease from eating and drinking, and I will go to the bank of the Ganges, the sacred place, and try to answer the death question, which now is very pressing in my life, as it is for everyone. And thus the 7-day analogy and so forth. And of course, the answer to his earnestness, which is evidenced by his willingness to give up food and drink. He's pretty interested in the subject, in solving the problem. He's thought about it philosophically. And so with that kind of introspection and sincerity that characterizes Parikshit, Sukadeva appears on the scene. It's not just by fasting, of course, but by the implication is paying all attention to the hearing from the sadhu, Sukadeva, and entering into learning about a life of giving rather than taking. He's learning to be a lover rather than a taker in Srimad Bhagavatam. So the story in Brihad Bhagavatam, according to Sukadeva, or according to Sanatana Goswami, is that his mother, Uttara, in whose womb Parikshit was endangered, according to the Bhagavatam, by the Brahmastra of Ashvatthama, and is now, having heard from Sukadeva, on the verge of meeting his protector when he was in the womb, Krishna. And he heard now 7 days from Sukadeva Goswami, and his 7 days are now up, right, according to the curse. And so she wanted to hear very quickly what he heard from Sukadeva. What did he say? What did he say? It took 7 days for Sukadeva to say it, and Parikshit Maharaj had to now say it in about 7 minutes or something like that. 7 hours, very quickly, to recite the essence of what Sukadeva reported to him. And his then telling of this to Uttara is what we now refer to as the Brihad Bhagavatam, Brihad Bhagavatamrita, the great nectar of the immortal nectar of the Bhagavatam. And as I say, Sanatana Goswami says this story of Parikshit Maharaj, Uttara asking the Raj, and the Raj telling her what Sukadeva said, is in another version of the Mahabharata. that nobody's ever heard of or ever seen, but that's what he says. And it's an interesting point, and you bring it up in a sense, directly or indirectly, because typically, we identify somewhere on the scriptural map with the Bhagavatam or the Bhagavad Gita, and if someone just comes along and makes something up, we tend to take it with not very seriously. The Shastra is very important, very central to the whole principle of revelation in terms of the Guru Parampara, because the Guru has to support what he or she says from the scripture. Otherwise, one Guru says this, one Guru says that, and God told me this, God told me that, and you're in a total soup of relativity here. So therefore, Prabhupada, for example, would emphasize the scripture as a standard of knowledge. It's like the map. Therefore, the Goswamis, for example, did the work to locate the ecstasy that Chaitanya Mahaprabhu embodied on the scriptural map. And he demonstrated that he is the personification of the Madanagi Mahabhav of Radha. It's an incredible work that he did, if you will, kind of academic work of supporting their position from the scripture, or again, the other way, locating the ecstasy of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu on the map of the sacred texts. So you have the guide, you have the map. You need both. The guide says, I've got the map, and so forth. So it's peculiar in this way that Sukadeva Goswami or Sanatana Goswami is making, just really stating. He's not making a case. He doesn't try to support it or give evidence that there is such another version of Mahabharata. I mean, there could be, but nobody's ever heard of it. I've never heard anybody anywhere confirm it, or any manuscript or anything of the sort. So for the most part, without thinking about it, most Gaudiya people and people outside of Gaudiya Sampradaya who comment on Srimad Bhagavatam, so we say it's not a Goswami's book. But the implication of it is, wait a minute, did he just make this up? Or like you said, why did it come through him? Should we believe it? And so forth. Well, it speaks to the power of Sanatana Goswami as a contributor, but I think also that it really constitutes an explanation of the essence of Srimad Bhagavatam, stripped of so many extra things that are packed into the Bhagavatam to give it a Puranic setting. There are, I think, 5 different, is it 5 different?
5 and 10.
There's some say, you can look at from 10 or 5 different elements of a Purana. You have to have the genealogical table, the Vamsanacharita, the Vamsas, the this, that, and the other thing, forget them all, that make a Purana. So all of these things have been put into Srimad Bhagavatam to make it a Purana. But what it's essentially about is what's couched in the Puranic setting. You take, for example, cosmology of the Bhagavatam, and even the description of matter in the part of the Bhagavatam. It's drawn from the Sankhya philosophy, and Bhagavatam basically makes the case that there's 2 sides to matter. There's a Gunamaya, its constituents, and Jivamaya, its power to delude, and it mostly deals with its Jivamaya, its power to delude. And while it gives some description of its constituents that would be bewildering to a modern scientist who's examining matter, and experimenting with it and getting certain results and demonstrating it's like this. Larger case that the Bhagavatam makes with regard to Gunamaya or matter's constituents is that it's Vishnumaya. You can't figure it out. You can't get a full grip on it. So at any rate, this is a description of matter given there. Cosmological description, other things are packed into the Bhagavatam. Its essential message is that what you find in the Bhagavatamrita, 2 things. One, which the first section of the Brihad Bhagavatamrita deals with, that there are different types of devotees of Vishnu. There's a gradation of devotion. And two, the longer story, the second part of the Brihad Bhagavatamrita, that there must be a place, a realm that corresponds with the different gradations of devotion and spirituality and religion. Really, it's what Brihad Bhagavatamrita says in essence is that the Bhagavatam is a very interesting interfaith study. Sounds interesting because we said it's exclusively about Krishna, but it's an interfaith study because it's like the Gita. The Gita has many different doctrines in it. There's Jnana Yoga, there's Karma Yoga, there's different types of Bhakti Yoga, there's Varnashram, and so on and so forth. But if you know how to read the book, of course, you see there's a central theme in the book that keeps coming up. And that theme is pointed out directly and indirectly. Indirectly by way of talking about what it's not, by contrasting it with different paths. And so the Bhagavatam moves in the same way. So it's culminating, bringing it to the point of Braj Bhakti. There's centers within Braj Bhakti. There's the Sakya Rasa, there's the Vatsalya Rasa, and there's the Madhurya Rasa, which is the center of the Bhagavatam. And the Braj Leela builds up to the Rasa Leela, that's climax, and then the whole rest of the Bhagavatam, all the Mathura Leela and the Dwarka Leela is reflection back on it, on the Braj Leela and the Rasa Leela in particular. It's properly understood. So it's Brihad Bhagavatamrita takes us through all the different realms of religious possibilities. The Tapalok, the Satyalok, the Mahalok, this lok, and the Vaikuntha, and below that Indraloka, and so on. All different conceptions of God, of the Godhead, that are not relative to Hinduism. If you look at them carefully, they're talking more generically about what you find in different religious paths in the world. I mean, that's a beautiful thing about Hinduism. It really is very comprehensive. You know, talking about Gyan, about karma, about bhakti. These aren't terms that are just, they sound like they're just relative to Hinduism, but the karma conception of God is basically there amongst the common people. And this low end becomes a fundamentalist religion. This high end, it becomes a pious pursuit of material acquisition through the recognition and petitioning of God. And then you have your mystics. Within Islam, within Christianity, you have your saints, the Catholic saints. You have Jesus, mystic. In Islam, you have Sufis, mystics. So this then is the demarcation between religion for acquisition, and this in Hindu term, pravritti marg, for acquiring things, for pursuing thoughts and things, through recognition of the Godhead, to foregoing things and thoughts and pursuing myself. An internal pursuit, nivritti marg. So your renunciation, your saints, giving up the world, the desert fathers of the Catholics, and so on and so forth. These types of people are the Sufi mystics, and so on. The Buddhists, I mean, a little different, but similar idea. And then there's of course there's the Bhakti idea, which is very most beautifully brought out in Bhagavatam, whereas action is canceled out by knowledge. Knowledge is canceled out by action. You understand? If you act in the world in pursuit of things, you will have no knowledge of yourself. If you give up the pursuit of things because you know that you want enduring happiness and things don't endure, then you move from an active life, chasing things, to an internal, contemplative life. So knowledge, even if you get an education in school, you have to work less hard physically. So knowledge and action, they, in a sense, we ask them that they cancel one another out. So if you're wise, you don't pursue non-enduring things when you're in pursuit of enduring life and happiness, as everyone is. But of course, these are two sides of the same coin, how material life runs. Now, there are systematic paths in the scriptures, how to pursue acquisition, how to give up, and so forth. But while these two cancel one another out, both are present in bhakti, because bhakti, love, involves action, and it involves kind of knowing, also super knowing. Includes knowing what the self is, obviously, and what it's not, and so forth. So at any rate, my point only is, as an aside, that the sacred texts of the Hindus are very comprehensive in speaking about religious possibilities, the nature of being, the nature of desire, and so on and so forth. And it plays out, you can find it in different religious sects. And within different religious sects, you can find these kind of gradations. Also, like I said, you can find the religious fundamentalists. You can find nice people that still aren't weird, but they want things, basically, and that's what they think religion's about. And then you have your mystics, and so on and so forth. So these things are all really drawn out and played out, thought about, reasoned about very beautifully in Hinduism, particularly in the Bhakti school, where it weighs in on karma and gyan, the two tracks on which material life runs, bhoga and tyag, same idea, to enjoy and to renounce, to get the thing, to give the thing up. I want it, I'm tired of it, that kind of thing. Because Bhakti, as defined by Rupa Goswami, is unencumbered by desire for things or for thoughts or for karma and for gyan. Therefore, there's a considerable discussion about the nature of karma, the nature of desire, the nature of kama and akama, desire and freedom from desire, and how they really are both have the same focus. One person wants to enjoy the world, take it. The other person wants to give up the world. The world is the focus of both people. And bhakti is not focused on either getting or taking, but there is getting, neither taking, acquiring, or renouncing. But there is acquiring and there is renouncing within bhakti, because if you love someone, you will acquire things that are pleasing, those habits and so forth, to the one you love, and you will give up the things that are not pleasing to the one you love. So they're in a natural way, in a harmonious way. These tendencies are found within bhakti. So at any rate, Brihad Bhagavatamrita, the essence of the Bhagavatam is really like the Bhagavatam is, and you can understand it from Brihad Bhagavatamrita, which is again said to be by Sanatana the quick version, the 7-minute version, instead of the 7-day version of Srimad Bhagavatam. And you see, it's a description of different religious possibilities. And it goes up and up and up and logically explains, takes you up the ladder and gives a very compelling explanation of the Braj Leela and Gopi Bhava in particular. And so, who is the highest devotee? And what is the corresponding realm? So the highest devotees are the gopis, and the corresponding realm is Goloka. The story is told, the second part, by the Gopa Kumar, the Priyanarmasaka, the friend of Krishna, who's involved with his romantic life as well. So it's very, the first part, I guess you haven't read the book and you wanted me to say something about the story? Or?
Maybe a little bit, yeah.
Yeah, so first part of the book, again, Narada is on the scene, and Narada is it's Narada, right? Yeah, he's pursuing the different types of devotion, religion. What's the best type of service to God? Something like that. And so he goes to in this world, and Indraloka and Brahmaloka and so forth. And each place he goes, the primal person there in Shivaloka, in Brahmaloka, and Indraloka, so forth, he arrives on the scene, and he praises that person and says, "Oh, Indra, your devotion to God, to Vishnu is incredible." And he goes on and on and on, speaks about it. And then Indra responds, "I'm nothing. What are you talking about? I'm a demon, practically. Just see my position." And he starts talking about all his negative qualities. And I fought with Krishna. He came here for the Parijata flower for his queen, Satyabhama. And I fought with him over that. I resisted it. I'm terrible. And so I stole his, I tried to rain in on his cows, calves, and if you want to know something about devotion, go to, what does he say? Go to Shiva or something. Go to Brahma. Goes to Brahma. Praises Brahma. Brahma replies, "I'm nothing. Go to Shiva." Shiva says, go to Prahlad. Prahlad says, "Go to Hanuman." Hanuman says, go to the Pandavas. Pandavas say, they go to Uddhava. That's what Krishna says. And each one is saying, and they go to the Braj, ultimately. And so then Uttara, the mother of Parikshit, wants to know, there must be, what's the nature of the realm that corresponds with this kind of devotion? And so then another story is told. It's the story of a Brahmin, born in Mathura, isn't it? And he seeks out, he gets initiated by the goddess Durga in Gopal mantra, isn't it? Directed towards Gopal. And he doesn't understand well, there's a story within the story there. Anyway, one fellow meets this cowherd in the forest, who comes as guru, tells him his story, how he was initiated, how he chanted the mantra, and he went to Jagannath Puri, worshipped Jagannath for a long time, and from there he went to beyond the world, and he went to all the different abodes, and ultimately he was tempted to merge into Brahman, but he resisted, and it's very, very intriguing, very powerful, compelling, very interesting story. And he ultimately goes to Vaikuntha, and he's in Vaikuntha, for example, and he's worshiping Gopal Krishna through his mantra, but he doesn't know anything. All he knows is he got the mantra. He chants it, and it works. And he doesn't really he's getting Siksha gurus along the way are giving him knowledge. You may think in Brahma Bhagavatamrita that his guru just gave him the mantra and disappeared, which is more or less what happened. But what's happening wherever he goes, he's finding Siksha gurus who are advising him and edifying him. So he learns about that abode and what's the shortcoming of it, and he feels it also at the same time. So the teachings as to the shortcoming of the abode that he's in prior to attaining Goloka, which is what his mantra corresponds with, he feels it, but he can't quite articulate it. And so the guru, the Siksha guru in each case, comes and articulates it. Yeah, this is why. He's in Vaikuntha and he sees Narayana and he goes, "Hey, Gopal." "You can't talk to him like that. Step back. Pay your obeisances." It's Narayana, who has a Gopal side that he shows sometimes on Janmashtami and but it's not the same exactly as the Goloka. It's also referred to as Mahavaikuntha. So Gopakumar is not quite satisfied, and so who is it in Nard, I guess, comes in Vaikuntha in Uddhava and says, "Look, talk to him, Uddhava. You've been to the Braj, okay? You had your experience. You went there. Krishna sent you there to give a message to the gopis, and you ended up getting edified by them. And so you know something about that kind of bhakti. That's where this guy belongs. Start talking to him." Uddhava tells him, "Well, first, go to Dwarka." So he goes to Dwarka, he has the Dwarka experience, so on and so forth. Ultimately, he comes back to earth in the Braj, Boma Vrindavan, earthly Vrindavan, and he chants by this time he's reached the efficacy of his mantra. So the mantra, its efficacy is attained when one attains liberation, bhav. So he didn't need to chant that. Now he stopped chanting his mantra, but he's chanting the favorite names of God. So he's doing Harinam Sankirtan of names that speak about Krishna. in relation to his rasa. It's in Sakya rasa. He's chanting the names and meditating on the Leelas. So this is Raga Bhakti. And so he takes the path of Raga Bhakti, living in the Braj, does Nam Sankirtan and Leela Smaranam, and he's quite qualified at this point, and he enters into the Goloka. So the Bodh corresponding with the highest love, and there he describes the Leelas there, and so forth. It's a very beautiful book. So what it is, as I say, in essence, is the essence of Srimad Bhagavatam. So if you want to know what Bhagavatam is about, and this is the central piece of the whole Gaudiya Sampradaya, again, it's the hub, the Bhagavatam, around which all the sacred texts orbit and understood in context. It was the heart of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu himself, it's described, Srimad Bhagavatam. And Sanatana Goswami says, Srimad Bhagavatam is the first book of our Sampradaya, giving the Gaudiya perspective on Srimad Bhagavatam. And so you find many devotees that read Bhagavatam, and they quote it, and they think what's important, and so on and so forth. We should study Srimad Bhagavatam and understand, or excuse me, read Bhagavatam and understand what the book is. Then they can, sometimes I make the point to devotees that there are some things that are relative, some things that are absolute, even in the scriptures. They go, oh, whoa, where do we, if it's not all absolute, where do we start? Where is it relative? Where is it absolute? Because budding faith wants things to be black and white, something to hold on to. So it's like this, it's not like that. And Prabhupada was very successful in preaching like that. It's not like this, it's not like that. Remember when I first heard, I said, hey, that's good, somebody knows what's going on here. Because talk about spirituality in the late 60s, early 70s was pretty flowery, and where do you go with it? He said, it's not like this. You don't smoke that, and you chant this, and you don't wear long hair. You can't shave your head. Okay, somebody's got to figure it out here, and it was comforting. So for the beginning devotee, that kind of freedom from the trouble of having to think, so to speak, is somewhat comforting. But you have to progress on from there, of course. It turns from black and white into many, many shades of gray. And the path is straight, at a certain point in Ishta, but it's not narrow, it's broad. And texts mean different things at different times. And same verses can be explained in different ways, all within the parameters of what constitutes bhakti, what's governed by the Swarup Shakti. But it's a fact. I mean, there is relativity. I was speaking with the devotees last night about this in brief, because the point had come up that Prabhupada, sometimes we see that Prabhupada invoked a preaching strategy to talk about falling from Goloka. Where did the jiva come from? Oh, it's your fault, you fell. And the other times he said, no, nobody falls, which one's right? So we've chosen that he said different things at different times. What he said that corresponds with the previous acharyas, all sampradayas, all of Hinduism is probably the Siddhanta. And what he said to the contrary was something he said you can think why he said it, but one of the reasons could be, well, and for convenience at the time, he thought that was the best way to just keep the train rolling. And he was very much like that. The short answer, someone would say, Prabhupada, when they go to Golok, what happens? Like after they eat. That's a stupid question. And Prabhupada would say, go there and find out. Go there and find out. That's what I'm teaching. Go there and find. So, okay, just kind of keep the ball, because you get caught up in your head and you get off on the tangent. Something slows you down from practice, which will reveal in due course everything if you don't start making offenses and start opposing the teaching. So the teacher can't tell everybody everything at once, and the teacher doesn't always tell the whole truth. And I was explaining to them, 3/4 of the Vedas are like that. 3/4 of the Vedas are telling people that what you should do is follow this path, chant this mantra to get a good son, to get a good daughter, to go to heaven, to get this, to get this. And all that is not what the scriptures are about. It's all like telling people what They don't think they can hear. Like, what does the Gita say? Hmm? Yeah, that I'm speaking about that, but something else too. It said, don't disturb the minds of the innocent by trying to tell them about. If you try to tell people who are attached to things too much and don't have the interest to come to a session like this at all, that you should give up things, you're not going to have any ear. There's not a teachable moment there. Better to tell them how to get things by bringing God into your life. Bring God into your life. Say this mantra, face this direction. Do that. So Surya Namaskar. Get good health, and then you start to become show gratitude towards nature, towards the universe, towards the world, because by loving it, the thought is, it will reveal its secrets and so forth. And you're starting to get in the ballpark. That's what all these Puranas and so many texts are about. You have the Shiva Purana, it's telling it different than the Vishnu Purana, the Brahma Purana, for different types of people. So it's full of it. The whole thing is like one preaching strategy after another, dealing with a very difficult case. You can't tell them everything at once. They come from a long background of anadi karma, and so finally, to get to the point of like, and it's about Braj Bhakti, whoa, that's a long way to go, where you have to bring somebody, and even Prabhupada, he was pretty much, you can't find the word like Raganuga Bhakti practically almost anywhere in his books, conversations or anything. I mean, there might be a couple small references. He was very pretty tight about it. A little bit, yeah. You can't hard to avoid it there, but very little. And he was very much concerned with creating an environment in which people would practice and chant. And then the idea would be to become more susceptible, more receptive, I should say, to hearing more, to learning more. And you got to be careful. The teacher has to be careful. You can't tell them too much, or you're going to break them. You can't ask too much from them. You can't tell them too much either. Because when you tell them too much, it's asking a lot. This is what it's about. Oh, I didn't think it was like that. Like, for example, you say, hey, look, our philosophy teaches that you're a person. You're an individual. Yeah, I thought I was an individual. No, now other people teach that you're not, and you just merge with Brahman and you're not an individual. Hey, I don't like that. Yeah, see, and you bring people on. Meanwhile, you haven't told them that you're not the person that you think you are. You're not the individual that you think you are, with all your likes and desire and everything. And then if you don't do it right, later on people go, hey, I thought this was personalism. What about that? I got my individual. So it's an art. Obviously, it's an art. Teaching, preaching. And the scriptures, are full of it, and they show that, and the teachers teach that, and so we have, Brihad Bhagavatam, the essence of the Bhagavatam, what can be thrown out of the Bhagavatam, so to speak, or what's a Puranic element that's included, and so forth. It's not that important to us. It's not essential. It's not about Sri Dharma, what women keep women in the closet or whatever, how that's interpreted, or it's not about Varnashram. There's a place for Varnashram, but Bhakti stands on the head of it, and so forth. Now, you got to be careful. So you find someone like Prabhupada or Bhakti Siddhanta Bhakti emphasizing some idea of Varnashram, because they're thinking, here we are, 500 years after Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's descent and giving this precious gift of Braj Bhakti to the world, and we've got Baba's out in the jungle meeting with ladies, in the name of Anurag Bhajan and Parakiya Bhav. This is a problem. So they wanted to emphasize the moral side of life that Bhakti transcends, but is kind of within Bhakti. Just like, look at Goloka. In Goloka, there's Varnashram. Now, it's not needed. You understand? In other words, what's really running the whole thing is the bhavas, but the structure, there's a structure of Varnashram. What that's telling us is that morality, good moral life, is contained within Bhakti. It's not that, hey, we don't need varnashram, we can be immoral and still do bhakti. And everything will be fine. Krishna says, sin and come to me, don't worry, give up the dharma. So they wanted to emphasize this side that anyone can start bhakti through sadhu sangha in any stage, but if you start at a low stage and you have all types of material desires, then look for this, the removal of the material desires, before you start looking for gopi bhav and misunderstanding it to be something like your material desires. I give the example a number of times. Once I was pulled aside in private in Vrindavan by one devotee, and he asked me, Maharaj, I want to ask you a private question. Is there any real sex life in the spiritual world? I mean, real sex life? And so I said to him, you don't get it. There's no real sex life in the material world. So at any rate, they, our acharyas who wanted to interface with the rest of the world, the modern world, and so forth, they wanted to put some emphasis on the things that should be leaving behind, or the things that should be coming into place as a result of your bhakti. You should become a morally stout person, a righteous person. The shortcomings of varnashram, in terms of being a comprehensive religious ideology, are not that they make you uptight or it's repressive or something like that, or it's sexist or however you want to look at it. The shortcomings of it are that the moral life itself is only a shadow of ultimate goodness. Therefore, you can never be perfectly morally. How can you do it? You can't be morally perfect. That's the whole idea. I've given an example many times that in my room in Adarya, I came into the bathroom and there was a spider's web in which a fly was caught. So being a good person, I went to free the fly, and here came the spider, and I realized it's his dinner. I'm taking his. What do you do here? So that's the whole moral realm. It's a shadow of real goodness. Real goodness, absolute goodness, transcends the moral life, and all the moral inconsistencies where you press down here and it goes up here, and you press down here and it goes up here. Well, I don't like this about Bernie Sanders, but I like that, or whatever, So I guess we'll make a compromise. It's a compromise. Material religion, so to speak, for material things is a compromise position. It has its place, but if you get to the bottom of it, you realize if I really want the good, I have to go beyond the moral realm, and I could step on the head of varnashram. But I'm a morally stout person that does it. Therefore, for example, in the Purva Mimamsa, the first section of the Vedic treatise on the Veda, it says, Atato Dharma Jignasu. Now is the time to inquire about religion. When you've completed that course, then you got the Vedantic side. It says Atato Brahma Jignasu. Now's the time to inquire about Brahman. And arguably, now's the time to inquire about rasa. That's Atato Brahma Jignasu. Now Mahaprabhu, of course, very generous. What can be done? He's mad. He's Krishna pursuing the mood of Radha, and it's making him crazy. And so bhakti's going everywhere. What kind of bhakti? His bhakti is going everywhere. So Rasa Jignasu is coming way down here to the immoral section, and it's none of it was giving it out. Take it. And so some acharyas go, well, it's good and all, but like, whoa, we got to talk about this now. Now we got to say something about this works, so that it's high thinking, he misunderstood, and so on and so forth. And so gradually, he started to explain, and so there are various strategies that might be evolved for preaching, and it seems like Sanatana Goswami's book as well is a preaching strategy, and he had the power to do it. You might say, well, wait a minute, who is he to just like, there's no proof that this other edition of the Mahabharata with Parikshit speaking to his mother Uttara exists, but his book is very powerful and compelling, no doubt, and it is Gaudiya original commentary, really, on Srimad Bhagavatam. And it's so powerful that nobody seems to question it, I mean, somebody made a complaint in more recent times that Bhaktivinoda Thakur wrote certain books and attributed them to different people. Like he wrote Harinam Chintamani, and it's a conversation between Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and Haridas. Later you go, he just wrote that, It's like, he just made that up, Or his novel Jivadharma, the people in there. Vijay Kumar and Rajanath, two main characters. Somebody asked Pujapati Sridhar Maharaj, was Tamal Krishna Maharaj, he said, was it possible to write a book and make up fictional characters like Bhaktivinoda Thakur did in Jivadharma to make a point? And Sridhar Maharaj said, he said, whatever is in the mind of Bhaktivinoda, that's true. But it's, so that's the whole other thing. In Braj Bhakti, in Bhakti, you can make it up as you go along at a certain point. When you become completely under the influence of Krishna Swarup Shakti, you think the cowherd boys have desires? You think they have no desire? Well, they just automatons? They have desires. Sakya Rasa is full, Madhurya Rasa is full desire, but all the desires are within the parameters of the influence of the Swarup Shakti, because the desires are coming due to that influence. We have material desires due to the environment of material nature. It's causing us to desire, which we have the capacity to do in relation to that environment. If we come in touch with the Braj or the Bhakti environment, we begin to develop desires in relation to that environment. A life, in other words. Desire means life. They have different desires, but they're all pleasing to Krishna. So at a certain point, a devotee in Bhava Bhakti starts to write his or her own ticket, so to speak. Of course, in a sense, because the bhakti, the bhava that they have is coming through the parampara, through the association that they have. What type of guru they have, what type of sadhus they've associated with. If they're steeped in bhakti, in certain type of rasa or bhava, that will come into you. You'll get some scars for that and so forth. But then within the context of that, if it's Sakya Rasa or Madhurya Rasa, there's two basic ideas. The Manjari Bhav, and the Sakas, the friends of Krishna. This is what Gaudiya Vaishnavism is giving to the world. Within that, every Manjari is different, every Kamar is different, and so forth. So there's a point where you're actually able to write the book, so to speak. And that's what the bhajan in Bhava Bhakti is about. And so here's Sanatana Goswami, he's telling the story, why did it come through him? Well, of course, which is what your question was, Mahaprabhu empowered him and told him, he particularly told Sanatana, I think, 4 things to write about, to produce books about bhakti, to excavate the places of Krishna's pastimes, establish the deity worship, something else, I forget what it was, 4 things. And incidentally, it's told that Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur sat to do Nam Bhajan for how long?
10 years.
9-10 years, rather than to preach. Bhaktivinoda told him to preach. Gorkashore, his other guru, told him, don't bother with that. Too much trouble. It's a thankless task. People will give you a lot of hard time and more people will do your bhajan. Get those 2 instructions from your 2 gurus. So he sat down and chanted for 9 years, followed by Gorkashore, and then a piece of paper blew in his direction. He picked it up, and it had the verse, Sanatana Mahaprabhu telling Sanatana Goswami these 4 things, do these 4 things. He said he had a vision of Panchatattva. He got up on his bhajan and said, what kind of Paramahamsa am I should do preaching. First, Pari Vrajak, he taught this way. Paramahamsa Varam Paramar Patim Patito Dharane Kutivation Matiraja Vinay. Beautiful verse of Sridhar Maharaj. Engraved on the walls of many Gaudiya monks describing Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur. 1 line from it there. How he was a Paramahamsa, but he stepped down from the position to be a yati, to be a Pari Vrajak preacher, to show the way by kirtan, preaching by kirtan. And kirtan, you do kirtan, but it's a dynamic thing. Who is the person in Bhagavatam, the figure in Bhagavatam, who became perfect by kirtan? Sukadev. That's a kirtan too, right? This is a kirtan. I think kirtan. So Bhaktisiddhanta, I mean, I'm not against the singing, obviously, that's beautiful and it's important too. But Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati and too, you get done speaking, I just chant. So Bhaktisiddhanta introduced the idea of the Brihat Mridanga, the bigger, and rather than sitting in a jungle and chanting and not being qualified and having your mind wander here and there, it's quite a task to try to take this teaching and lie to people about it.
And what?
Lie to people about it. To develop a preaching strategy to say how to explain it. You go out to the store and somebody says, "Hey, those are nice beads. What are they?" And you go, "Where do I begin?" Okay, they're sacred beads, And my guru gave them to me. Oh, well, cool. Tell me more. Where do I begin? I'm at the Kmart. So that's very consuming, was his point. You have to think about, how am I going to present this? I've done a kirtan at a yoga session and people ask them questions. They don't know what I'm talking about. And I realized I just gave a short talk and their questions realized they didn't understand it. They didn't quite get it. So I have to really nicely explain it and so forth in such a way that they're going to digest it and some of it and come forward and so forth. So that's an art, and that's very consuming. And this is the power of kirtan. It's very, 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 very consuming. It's the main anga, limb of bhakti for Kali Yuga. So anyway, Sanatana Goswami, he followed Mahaprabhu's order, and this is one of the first things he did. He wrote Brihad Bhagavatamrita. Now, whether there is some Mahabharata edition somewhere, well, it's in the mind of Sanatana Goswami, so it must be there. And it's a beautiful story, but Mahaprabhu, of course, why Sanatana? Why Rup? Why not Ramananda Roy or this one or that one? There's a couple of reasons for why Mahaprabhu chose Rup Sanatana, Jiva Goswami, and so forth. Rupa Goswami and Sanatana were the leaders, of course, of the 6 Goswamis. And the description of his personally teaching them in Benares, Sanatana, at Prayag, Rupa Goswami, is given in Brihad Bhagavatam, in Chaitanya Charitamrita. We don't find him teaching Jiva Goswami like that, or Gopal Bhatta Goswami, or Raghunath Bhatta, Raghunath Das, in the same way. So they were the main bearers of the teaching. Now, Goswami wrote, obviously Jiva Goswami wrote prolifically, and Gopal Bhatta Goswami as well. But leaders of the 6 Goswamis, Rup and Sanatana. And there's 2 reasons for that. There's the external reason and the internal reason. The external reason is they were very uncommon people from a worldly point of view. They spoke many languages. They were highly positioned in the Muslim government in Bengal. Sanatana Goswami was the de facto ruler of the Muslim kingdom in Bengal when Nawab Hussain Shah was out conquering somewhere else. So they were very, as much as crude as the Muslim occupation of Hindu India was, still these leaders were in some way very cultured people within the context of their own culture, so to speak. The kings were educated, they were wise, they could have command over people, they could understand people's psychologies and so forth and so on. They were beneficent to their own constituents and so on. So he was both Rupa and Sanatana were super qualified people. The story is, of course, that Nawab Hussain Shah was in Bengal, and he was having a tomb built for himself. For when he died, he would be entombed. So he hired the best artisans, and he wanted to have the best tomb in all of India for himself. And so what happened? They were making the tomb, and
he said to the architect that he did a really good job.
Yeah, he said, "You've done a really good job." And he said, "Well, I could have done better." And so he cut off his head, right? And so then he told his assistant, what did he tell him?
Like, go get it. Go get it. Yeah.
Go get it. Yeah, go get it, or something like that. And that guy didn't know what to think. He said, I'm getting out of here, where I'm going. Can I have my head cut off? He didn't know what the king really wanted.
Go get the best. Go get the best.
Yeah, he didn't quite get figured out. He just left. And so he was wandering, and he met the young Rupa and Sanatan, and they saw that he was very troubled, and so they had compassion, and they asked about, what's troubling him. He said, what has happened? And then they said, oh, this is what he wants. They could answer the question. It wasn't as clear as that, but they could answer the question. So then he went back and he answered the question. He said, how do you figure out the answer to my questions? I met these young fellows and bring them here. I want them to work for me. So they brought them, and they quickly rose, given high position and so forth. They could understand the minds of people from their physiology, their body language, and so on and so forth. So they're very sophisticated people, and they could move amongst educated people. Mahaprabhu needed some educated people to establish his sampradaya, and they began writing in Sanskrit, which was the educated language for religious culture of the time, not the common vernacular of Bengali or this language or that in the subcontinent of India. So they wrote in Sanskrit, and they started penning the philosophy, the theology of the whole lineage. He needed these kinds of people. So this is external reason. There are many artisans and writers and so forth amongst the associates of Mahaprabhu, artisans, men and women of the arts, and sophisticated, cultured people. But you see the story in Jagannath Puri. It's important. Rupa Goswami came to Jagannath Puri after having met Mahaprabhu at Prayag. He came to meet him in Puri, and at that time he had written his dramas, Vidagdha Madhava and Lalita Madhava. And he was staying with Haridas, the outcast, because he was an outcast not by birth but by circumstance, having worked for the Muslims in the outcast of the Hindu society. Mahaprabhu brought Ramananda Roy, Swarup Damodar, other literary men and so forth with him, and to meet Sanatana, to meet Rupa Goswami. And Mahaprabhu said about him, oh, he's written some poems too, some dramas. And he said, what to speak of the content? His handwriting is enough to, they're like rows of pearls. He said, he praised the handwriting of Rupa Goswami as if to say, what to speak of what he writes. His handwriting is just beautiful. And how he wrote it, what was his penmanship? So then you have Ramana Roy goes, because he knows the math of poetry, of the dramas. There have to be certain elements in place and so forth. So what is the Namaskar verse? What is this verse? What is that verse? And he starts citing them, and so and they're all amazed. So what's happening is Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is showing why he selected Rupa Goswami and Sanatana Goswami to be the main writers of what is orthodoxy of Gaudiya Vaishnavism. They were very educated. Of course, the spiritual, so we go to the internal, esoteric side. Who were they in Krishna Lila? Rupa Goswami, Rupa here means form, means beauty. Means form, it means beauty also. It's thought that Rupa Manjari is the incarnation of the beauty of Radha. And her beauty takes birth. All the different principal gopis in Vrindavan are all manifestations of some emotional aspect or quality of Radha. She is all of them together. So the beauty of Radha is incarnate, if you will, or manifest as Rupa Manjari. And Sanatana Goswami also Manjari. So the Manjari Bhav is the way in which one jiva can come as close to experiencing what Mahaprabhu experienced, which is Krishna trying to taste himself from Radha's perspective. The closest you can come to that is through the Manjari Bhav, and this, having come to experience that, the opportunity for others to do so overflows to the world, And this is the way, and they show the way through their sadhana. And they don't come out and say it in so many words, Rupa Sanatan, but Raghunath Das does. He says, and what Rupa has shown, the way he is doing the bhajan, that is the way. And he's explaining Manjari Bhava. So you can't become Radha. Mahaprabhu was stepping into Radha's shoes. But from the Manjari perspective, you can come closer to Radha than anyone who has a direct union with Krishna. Any other gopi that has a direct union with Krishna cannot have the full experience of Radha. They can have their own experience directly of Krishna, but not of Radha's. But if you become servitor of Radha and become so identified with her that her experience, you experience vicariously, indirectly, by attachment to her. Therefore, it said, if in the love play of Radha and Krishna, Radha gets bitten by Krishna or something, at some scratch, it may show up on Rupa Manjari. You understand? They have access to the most intimate leelas. So this is the closest you can get to what Mahaprabhu's experience was. And so that's not what Ramana Roy's position, that's not Sri Damodar's position, this one, that one, and so forth. And they're expert teachers. They had the substance, and they were very qualified externally as well. So they were chosen for this role. And so it comes from Sanatana Goswami. We have to take very seriously. There's good reason why it would come through him and read it along with him. The first book of our Sampradaya, and very, very highly readable and important to study. I think you've read it. ISKCON has an edition. Bhakti has an edition.
There's Gopi Prabhupada.
Right. Yeah. There's some other editions too now. So, thank you for the theme. How long are you going to be with us? Another month or so?
Oh, yeah. In the future.
Okay. Yeah, you should come and spend some time. Yeah.
We looked at the land of our cabin.
We looked over there.
We left with, I had 5 pieces of land in my hand.
Oh, good.
They put 5 pieces in my hand.
It's a nice piece of property, yeah. Very nicely divided into different sections and so forth.
Today I actually experienced how the ground sparkles, quite literally. And I'm very drawn to sparkly things, as Bhakti Rice knows. So she was very expert in getting me very attached to the land.
That's good. That's good.
The land today, and today we could actually see what you have already been seeing. The past couple of times first time we just forest, second time, okay, I'm getting some picture, and this time we could really start seeing. And it was,
We can't tell you everything at once.
I'm already completely overwhelmed. I mean, just seeing the area that Rohini Nandana cleared, that just blew me away, that entrance where you come. I could completely see.
Yeah, it has
the
great
tents
potential.
there.
Great potential.
Really, when I saw that, I was like, oh, I get it.
And
then they took us up to the Samadhi Ridge.
very good. Well, it's yours to participate in. It belongs to you. It belongs to the devotees.
We already have 5 pieces of land.
Okay.
Thank you.
Sri Radha Madhava ki jai.
Jai.
Bhaktivinda ki
Jai.
jai. Full Premanand.
Hey.
Vancha Kalpatarubhyascha.